targeted but significant changes to how the Union uses existing programs for defence-related and dual-use priorities. It reflects a simple fact. Europe is operating in a security environment that is anything but normal, and our instruments must finally match that environment. This regulation does not create new funding lines. Instead, it aligns and strengthens 5 existing programs: Digital Europe Programme, Connecting Europe Facility, Strategic Technologies for Europe Platform, Horizon Europe, and European Defence Fund, so they can support defence and dual-use projects in a coherent and operational way. This is the approach the Commission proposed, and together with the Council, Parliament has sharpened and completed. Let me outline what will now be possible that was not possible before. First, and the most consequently, Ukraine will be associated with the European Defence Fund. This was Parliament's demand from day one. It recognizes Ukraine's defence industrial capacity and ensures it becomes part of Europe's defence ecosystem. It is strategic, it is operational, and it sends the right signal at the right moment. Second, we open the Horizon Europe EIC accelerator to dual-use and defence-relevant innovation. This is a targeted temporary derogation limited to this MFF. The civilian character of Horizon remains the foundation, but we remove an artificial barrier that held European innovators back. Startups, SMEs, and mid-caps working on critical technologies will finally be able to access support. And we secured strong eligibility and ownership safeguards. Participation is limited to the EU, EEA, and Ukrainian entities, with clear rules on the foreign control. This is about strengthening our technological base and protecting it. Third, Parliament expanded the Digital Europe programme to address real vulnerabilities, hybrid threats, cyber resilience, and the development of AI factories. The front line of security today is digital as much as physical, and depth now reflects that. Fourth step, we'll conclude dedicated strategic sector for defence technologies. This aligns the programme with Europe's actual capability needs and gives Member States a consistent framework for prioritization. Fifth, the Connecting Europe facility now includes explicit support for dual-use transport corridors, energy logistics, fuel networks, and counter-mobility infrastructure. These elements are essential for military mobility, for NATO reinforcement, and for the resilience of critical infrastructure. The European Defence Fund also becomes more agile, with simplified procedures for disruptive projects and streamlined processes for SMEs. These adjustments matter for delivering capability faster. The regulation also introduces important flexibility for Member States. It allows the voluntary relocation of unspent cohesion resources towards defence-relevant projects under CEF, STEP, and Digital Europe programme. This gives governments the option to support dual-use infrastructure, digital resilience, and critical enablers without additional strain on national budgets. And this responds directly to what Europeans are asking of us. Across recent Eurobarometer surveys, defence and security are top of mind for European citizens. Support for common defence policy is at record levels. Colleagues, defence is no longer a taboo for Europe funding, and this regulation reflects that shift. It gives Member States real tools without increasing the EU budget and sets a precedent for how the Union should approach defence spending: targeted, coherent, and based on real capability needs. This regulation is not symbolic. It is operational, and it shows that the principle acta non verba is alive and well. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Rapporteur.
Thank you very much, Rapporteur. Christoph Hansen for the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President, honourable members. I believe we can say that this is a very proud day. The political agreement on the mini-omnibus on defence was agreed in just one sitting, just one trilogue, and that is exactly the kind of speed and efficiency we need when our defence readiness is at stake. And so I thank the rapporteur, Mr. Coles. I thank the shadow rapporteurs in this House and, of course, as well, the Danish presidency for all their efforts and speed. And tomorrow, with your formal adoption of the agreement, we take another important step forward to strengthen Europe's defence readiness. The minibus is small in name, but big in results, or as our French colleagues said during the trilogue, petit mais costaud. The mini-omnibus is a central element of the EU ReArm Europe plan and a key part of the midterm review of cohesion policy and essential to the defence readiness omnibus. And we are mobilising our European funds for our defence, innovation funds, technology funds and digital funds, Horizon Europe, European Defence Fund, the Strategic Technology for Europe platform, the Digital Europe programme, the Connecting Europe facility, and we are amending 5 major instruments, enabling faster, more coordinated and more predictable investments into Europe's defence, technological and industrial base. And the mini-omnibus makes it easier to use these funds for defence and dual civilian military use, and makes it easier for the European Defence Fund to support disruptive technology and our talented small and medium-sized companies. And I'm also very glad that this agreement on the mini-omnibus allows the association of Ukraine with our nearly €8 billion European Defence Fund. And this is a milestone. It deepens the EU-Ukraine defence cooperation, it boosts Ukraine's resilience and supports Ukraine's integration into Europe's defence industry, and we will also benefit of it. Ukraine's experience and capabilities are indispensable for Europe's long-term defence readiness, and the mini-omnibus is a key part of our strategy for defence as outlined in the White Paper on Defence Readiness, which we presented in March. And since then, we have presented many initiatives and proposals preparing the ground to ramp up defence spending and production and achieve military and defence readiness. And delivery on defence readiness is now increasingly urgent. Now Russia increases its attacks on Ukraine, its provocations in Europe and America pivots towards the Indo-Pacific. And so, in short, the mini-omnibus is mini in name, but maxi in results. And I urge you to swiftly approve it. And on a final note, it took 1.5 years to agree on EDTIB, the European Defence Industry Programme. Maybe not so long compared to other proposals, but much too long for defence readiness. And the agreement on the mini-omnibus you reached in just a few hours, I call on you, show the same speed, efficiency and determination when moving forward on our proposals now before you. On our big defence readiness omnibus that massively cuts red tape, so defence can ramp up production. And on our military mobility regulation to quickly move troops and equipment in times of crisis. And the situation is urgent, ladies and gentlemen. Delay is very dangerous, and Putin will not wait for us. Our ability to deter and defend depends on our ability to pass good laws and to pass them quickly. But that is for tomorrow. So today, my congratulations again to the rapporteurs and to the entire plenary that will hopefully adopt this. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now, on behalf of the Committee on Security and Defence, Streiten.
Colleagues, dear Commissioner, thanks first off to Rapporteur Coles and all other colleagues from all committees. And this not-so-mini omnibus is a welcome step forward. Bringing Ukraine into the European Defence Fund is a strategic win-win, giving Ukraine's defence industrial base access to funding and incentivising cooperation between European and Ukrainian industries. Opening EU funding to dual-use projects and reinforcing connecting Europe for military mobility and the repair of critical infrastructure are equally necessary. Yet, security is not built by weapons alone. Social cohesion, regional development, societal resilience are critical, and that's why, for example, the inclusion of civil protection and societal resilience matters. To be effective, this omnibus must be matched by deeper European defence integration, from research to joint development and procurement and to European command and control capabilities. Our security and defence do not stop at internal borders. When European funds are used, they must deliver genuinely European solutions subject to this House oversight. Only like that we can build a genuine European defence union. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Sergei Lagodinsky, please.
Dear colleagues, dear Vice President, I'm hugely relieved that both co-legislators followed our advice and agreed to omit Article 114 as legal basis, not only because it leaves more space for EDTIB, but also because it allows us to focus on the essentials. And the essential is Europe has reached the end of comforting zone and comforting illusions. Russia is escalating. We're seeing provocations like today probably in Berlin in the Bundestag where the internet was shut down. Defense today is no more only about tanks and missiles. It is about codes, it's about data, satellites. Security is no longer declared, it is engineered. This is what this defense mini omnibus is about and what it delivers. We, the Parliament, and I'm also a shadow, we, the Parliament, shaped this file to change how Europe acts, not rhetorically, but structurally. The agreement opens Horizon Europe to dual use and critical defense without losing sight of peaceful innovation. It strengthens the European Defence Fund by simplifying procedures, it aligns Digital Europe and the Connecting Europe facility, and it makes another historic turn. It integrates Ukraine as part of European Defence Fund. This is something that the Greens proposed, and I'm very proud of my group that we did it with accessing the 9.5 billion in defence. Ukraine truly becomes part of our defence and industrial sector. This is not militarization. It is responsibility to defend our values with real capabilities, together, also together with Ukraine. Thank you very much and good luck with this law.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much indeed.
Voorzitter, collega's, meneer de commissaris, er wordt veel gesproken over het belang van een...
Commissioner, honourable members, we've been talking a lot about this subject, but what we need to do is become more specific in terms of our ambitions, and that's what is happening here. There are so many initiatives that the Commission had taken, mini-omnibus, for example, an important step. Civilian use, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, these are open to dual-use products. Of course, it won't be a great step forward, but it might have significant impacts. And it's not just about different research sectors, but it's about trans-sectoral cooperation as well. I think that would give us a very interesting collaboration. So on the military plan, we could open up all sorts of possibilities, endless possibilities, Internet of Things, for example. We really need to work towards and use technology to progress forward in the area of defence, and working together, civil and defence, civil and military use for these products. We have to be smart in our approach as well, meaning that we must focus on European collaboration and cooperation and avoid dovetailing. This is a good sign that we are moving towards something interesting, but we're not there yet. We're far from it. If we want to be competitive in Europe, we need to really focus on a European strong industry, including defence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bruno Gonçalves, please. President, colleagues, the national strategy for security of Trump is the end of the transatlantic alliance, and the report that we're talking about today is therefore all the more important. The U.S. focus in terms of China and its global approach, and the big wars are going to be substituted by new partnerships. And it's not by accident that the president says that they will no longer have a stable but a strategically stable relationship with Putin instead of with Europe. And we are all very much shocked by this report, therefore, we are adopting for investment in defense and is all of the more important today. But it's not just enough to speak, we must do. And this can only be done if we work together as Europeans. And we promise to Ukrainians that they can have the access to funds so they can fight for our liberty. The security of our continent is our right. It cannot be the colony of anyone else. This is the European Union. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, colleague. Petra Steger, please.
Thank you very much. Our European war psychosis goes even further. 800 billion is a slap in the face of European taxpayers. People don't know how they can manage the basic cost of living, and you're just pumping billions more into the European defence industry and fueling this war. It seems you're willing to do anything. This is an important part of the EU budget. You're taking funds from other areas, Next Generation EU, social stability, many other areas, and you're pushing all of this towards Ukraine. You're opening up the budget to arm Ukraine. That is not enough. You want more money still. You want to create debt. You are abusing this war to create this debt and take these funds. We're talking about an extra 2 billion, as if we hadn't spent enough. It's just creating a further cycle of escalation. It's a real scandal.
Thank you very much. Judith Jadi, please.
Thucydides had a lot to say about how we can prevent war. Herodotus as well. All the philosophers, Clausewitz, in order to avoid war, you have to explain to your opponent that he has nothing to gain from war. It took us a long time in Europe to understand that to avoid war, it's not going to happen with green interventions and policies or left-wing policies. Now, the Russian aggression on Ukraine and the involvement of Trump has woken us out of our lethargy, because we are talking about the possibility of, and it's not the first time we've seen people suffering from invaders. I'm thinking of Cyprus in particular. And what would people say in other countries, Germany and Spain and France, for example, if 30% of your territory was occupied by foreign troops? I think, Europe, it is time to stop being hypocritical and take some action.
Thank you very much. Anna Sturk.
Das eigene Haus, das ist Freiheit, das ist Verantwortung.
It is about freedom and security in our own house, and that is the same with our common European house. If I build a house, but I wouldn't let thieves install my alarm, but that seems to be what we have done as Europeans. We have our critical digital infrastructure, and we have too often left this in foreign and dangerous hands. If we look at our electricity supply in the hands of the Chinese in some cases, we seem to be outsourcing our security. We've left it to the US to defend us for decades instead of taking care of it ourselves. But if my house is broken into, I want the police from my country to come and help me. We need security and defense made in Europe with common financing and financing to European countries to make our European house safe and European peace. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. UC Saramo.
Chair, EU countries spent almost 400 billion euros on defense, and the plan is to double it. But the astronomical amount of money is flowing away. The majority goes to the US arms industry. A large part goes to Israel. It is extremely important for our employment, our economy, and our security to move the defense industry to Europe. It is great that the majority in this chamber are aware of the Russian threat. I am grateful that Ukraine is now being increasingly integrated into European defense production. It is also important to defend us against hybrid attacks, especially in the eastern parts of the EU. But unfortunately, the majority still seems to be sleeping soundly in the face of the threat from the United States. The US is attacking our democracy and our economy with increasing severity. This report does not specifically address this issue, but in the future we must direct 100% of our common defense spending to the European production. I would like to thank all the groups and the rapporteur for the constructive negotiations. The result has many improvements, but also weaknesses. For me, most important, the horizon should have been left outside the defense industry.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. Alexander Jungblut, please.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident,
President, projects for defence such as ReArm Europe have no business in this House, either direct or indirectly. Really, this is not a good idea with using taxpayers' money to go into defence. We really should leave that up to the sovereign states and not the EU. Now we're talking about here 800 billion being spent on defence by 2027. And if you look at a website, the Commission wants peace, but we're talking about using this in order to build up a defense union. You talk about securing peace, and you talk about being able to set up a defense, but actually you're just throwing money at the arms industry. You talk about strength in Europe, but you're spending sovereign states' money in order to build up an EU armaments machine. Why don't you just do something useful and give the money back to the citizens or give it back to the sovereign states?
Thank you very much. Mr. Sousa Silva. President, Commissioner, colleagues, this resolution focuses on something extremely tangible, how we are going to adapt European programs that already exist to a security reality that has fundamentally changed. Now, we have already identified the problem, and this for a while now. Europe needs to produce more and more quickly. It needs to innovate better. It needs to reduce its dependence on third countries, and it needs to reduce its administrative burden. For all of these reasons, the Omnibus on Defense is an opening to the armed forces as beneficiaries of EU funds and programs. The use of cohesion funds to increase the capability and resiliency of member states, and a reference to hybrid threats where equipments and infrastructures for dual use are consistently in demand. The priority has been placed on security of the civil protection as well as the inclusion of AI in areas related to R&D and related to military industrial production. Now, all of these subjects are subjects that are focal points of this resolution, and we would like all of the member states to contribute. For that purpose, we need to guarantee that all can, and that SMEs have access, and that the less industrialized regions are not left outside, and that universities contribute with applied R&D. And that is why we're talking about pragmatism, consistency, and focus on the essential. President, this is Europe that is united on a single purpose, security and defense. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Galvez.
Thank you very much. Research and development are key for the autonomy of Europe. There is increasing threats around us. We have to prioritize quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, cyber security. They do not just strengthen our defense, but also European competitiveness. Europe cannot allow to fall behind when it comes to disruptive technologies or the financing of these innovations. That is why we need better protection against foreign interference and hybrid threats in the digital area. This is key to protect our technological sovereignty. It will strengthen cross-border cooperation and help SMEs and startup companies. This agreement is an exceptional agreement that has been made for the situation we are in and does not affect the Civilian Horizon program. We want to fully benefit from the ReArm program to have a secure, autonomous, innovative Europe and a Europe that lives in peace. Thank you.
Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Sebastian Tinkinen, please.
Mr. President, Europe must finally start to realize the true gravity of our small defense readiness. It is a matter of life and death. The fact that the eligibility for research and innovation funding will now be extended to European defense companies is a big step to the right direction. I think that the fact that we even have to do this kind of decision now shows how lost most of the politicians in Europe have been in the past. If our security has not been worth our research and innovation funding, may I ask, what has been more important? Actually, there is another good thing about this regulatory change. When EU funding is flowing to industries that actually matter, it won't be going to areas where the EU money should not be going to in the first place. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, cher collègue.
Thank you very much. Now, Dan Barna, please.
Domnule președinte, suntem conștienți cu...
Chair, we are all aware that the geopolitical realities have changed. The new national security strategy of the United States is not a mere update. It is one last warning that was also sent in written after many declarations through which Washington has been loud and clear. The age of unlimited dependence is over. Europe has to urgently take responsibility for its own security. And to this end, ReArm Europe must be fully financed. But we have to be very careful when choosing how to do this. I see proposals to finance our frigates by cutting funds from cohesion, agriculture, or by freezing enlargement. This is a strategic error. We cannot secure our borders by weakening the communities behind them. We need new resources, not painful cuts. Defense is primordial indeed, but we need to defend our European social model just as firmly as we defend our territory. We have to build a secure Europe and at the same time keep the promise of a prosperous Europe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Marc Potenga, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, colleagues, what we're being proposed is really a whole series of different funds, our money, which should be improving life for the citizens of Europe, is going to serve the multinationals, to serve war and the shareholders. So everything is going towards the arms industry. All the research money going to the war. Even public funds for transport. All these are going to be deviated and go into the coffers of the arms and defence industry. Do you think that's going to be useful for Europe? That you think we're too good? Our train systems, our railway systems are running too effectively? Really, what we really need to think about is why, if you spend 3 times more than Russia and much more than practically any other country in the world, why can't we actually defend ourselves? Either you're lying to us or there's something hidden behind it. There's some corruption going on, poor management, I don't know. But that's what, you need to come up with a better excuse if you're going to rob us of our money.
Thank you. Mr. Borvendijk, please.
You instigate war against Russia, you want to arm, and 800 billion euros should be paid by the member states, whereas you have been burning money for years in Ukraine for years. The EU is not a defense alliance. We Hungarians have been protecting the Schengen borders for 10 years, but instead of being supported, we are penalized while you're funding the golden toilets of Ukrainian oligarchs. The Commission is rife with scandals of corruption, but puts pressure on those who do not fall in line. Why would we think then that the joint defense program would serve our own defense? If we concede our defense to an EU level, maybe the protection would be dependent on rule of law, conditionality. Article 7 would mean that the joint army would be deployed as law enforcement in disorderly member states. We have lived under foreign occupation. We don't want that. The fatherland can only be defended by the national army and policies that serve national interests.
Dear colleague, yes, you have a request for a blue card from Madame Boss. You accept? Okay. Madame Boss. If you, yes, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for accepting the blue card. I just want to ask you one question. Do you see that it was actually Russia who started the war in Ukraine? That's one question. Second question, do you want us to give up one state by state, first Ukraine, then perhaps Hungary, then perhaps some of the Baltic countries? Where does this stop? Where are you going to put your foot down?
I don't know how Russia is behaving. The Soviet Union have occupied us for a long time. I know that. And I also know that Russia did not go into Europe without being invited, never attacked Europe. First, Hitler attacked Russia in the Second World War first, and against Napoleon, it had to enter Europe, but they never started. I, as a historian, know what the geopolitical interests of Russia are. We are not in danger.
Thank you.
The last word, if you want. Merci beaucoup.
For the microphone. Okay. I just don't get that answer. I was asking you correctly just now, not back in history, just now. Did you see that Russia was starting the war, entering Ukraine with an aggressive warfare? Easy to answer. Yes or no?
Merci beaucoup. Le débat.
Thank you very much. This debate is closed.
Nous continuons.
We will continue now with Diana Ivanovici.
Thank you. Today, we saw hostages being released from Belarus after the intervention of President Trump and the lifting of some sanctions against Belarus, a country that is friends with the Russian Federation. While Trump is trying to bring about peace, the European Union arms itself and sends weapons to Ukraine, which means that this war shall not end. You don't care that other countries are against this. You are not the countries, you are not the states, the citizens are. And you seem to forget that you were voted in this parliament by citizens to bring a good life to them, not to kill people. If you ask yourself who will win this war, learn this: a victory in a war where people die is only a victory of Satan. You are not God's people, and you don't care about European citizens. In Romania, you forced us to take loans and loans and loans, and now we cannot afford to pay them back. People are starving. They don't have access to health services. People with disabilities receive 50 euros per month, and you want us to borrow more money. How shall we repay these funds? In November, we could not pay salaries and pensions. Instead of joining Trump's peace plan, you are in fact creating the most awful war down there. And yes, I am interested in this because Romania has the longest border with Ukraine, and our people are dying of hunger.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We will continue now with Mirosława Niekel.
Dziękuję bardzo, Pani Przewodniczący, koleżanki i koledzy.
Thank you very much, President, colleagues. When we stop supporting Ukraine, then we might as well just start learning Russian. That is what Kaja Kallas said, and it shows us how difficult the situation is. It's important for us to finance defense. This is something which is a need. It's not just something which is optional. We need to be able to protect our citizens and critical infrastructure. We have to be committed. Poland, in its presidency, reiterated the importance of security in Europe. And I think it is very clear to see peace is at the foundation of the EU, but it cannot be taken for evident. I think today's report clearly shows that we need better financial means to build up our infrastructure. We need new, more modern technology. We need the European technological industry to further develop. In my area in Silesia, we need new financial instruments there too. We cannot lose any time. We need to do this sooner rather than later, otherwise we will pay a huge price. We need to be ready to defend ourselves. Thank you.
Jean-Marc Germain, vous avez une minute, s'il vous plaît. Mr. Germain, you have 1 minute.
Monsieur le Commissaire, chers
Commissioner, colleagues, we have drones invading our airspace, sabotage, cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure, anything to destabilize our democracy. And let's not delude ourselves. It's not just Ukraine that is under attack. Russia's already waging a hybrid war against us in Europe. So it's not an option. It's an absolute essential necessity. So after EDTIB, with the flexibility, thanks to this regulation, to increase investments in defence, this is all very welcome, as is access for Ukraine to European defence funds. But really, we owe the truth to Europeans. This is going to be absolutely essential, and it's only a minimum if we're going to be able to cope with the threat. There's the idea of the next generation EU 2.0. That is what we need. That's the only way forward. And the Council will have to give a green light on Thursday to the loan that we have committed ourselves from the assets, the Russian assets, to help Ukraine. We will never forget that it is the first in the forefront of European defence. Would you accept a blue card from Mr. Oliveira?
Thank you very much, President. Mr. Germain, now you are here to state to us that peace would be met with threatening Russia. So I'd like to ask you, how do you plan? I think perhaps the gentleman is searching for the translation.
Maybe you start again. Vous êtes prêt, Monsieur Germain?
Are you ready, Mr. Germain?
Okay. Okay, please start again.
Thank you very much, President. Mr. Germain, you have come here, sir, to sell to us this idea that peace within the EU is something that would only be met with investment from the EU budget to weaponize ourselves for conflict with Russia. So my question would be, how do you imagine, sir, that we will be able to get peace through this threat of conflict with a nuclear power? To what extent will you do you believe that the threat of nuclear war would bring us peace? I believe that we need diplomacy to resolve a conflict. How do you believe that the budget should have as a priority the expenditure for weapons when we have so many other problems to deal with here in Europe?
Monsieur le député, merci pour votre...
Thank you very much for your question, sir. But there is one thing you should know. Putin will go as far as we allow him to go, and what's going on in Ukraine, it's not about waging war with Russia. It's about stopping Russia from winning the war in Ukraine. So we have to give the Ukrainians the means to defend themselves and defend their territory. But of course, you are correct, diplomacy should be used, and we can welcome the efforts of Europeans, the European Union, in trying to work with Ukraine, help to ensure that they can find a peace agreement, respecting their territorial integrity. But if you think Putin won't go further, then there's no need to worry about that. Don't delude yourself. Mr. Tridico now has...
President, Commissioner, colleagues, politics is not the art of preparing war, it is the art of stopping war. Europe exists because of what it learned, and it experienced it firsthand. And we know that war without dialogue lives to calamity. Today, we are stating that we have to get used to this idea of conflict. This arms race is not strengthening Europe, it's dividing it. In 2025, the MFF has increased the budget for security and defense by 10%. And this with asymmetrical national budgets that leads to competition amongst the member states. This is not defense. We are rewriting the budget for the EIB, for the cohesion, for Invest EU, that we're all here to reduce inequality, to bolster unity, and to lead to demilitarization. And now, actually, we are militarizing to guarantee private profit with the taxpayer picking up all the risk. This is not common security. It is weakening the EU in its comprehensive form. And we are saying this in solidarity with Ukraine. We were elected to leave a better future to our children and not to prepare us for war.
2 blue cards, Mr. Tridico. You have received 2 blue cards, one from Mr. Sipper, one from Mr. Tinkinen. You wish to take them?
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Sipper, 841, you have the floor.
Grazie. Signore, yeah. Hello. Hi. Non bisogna...
We shouldn't defend ourselves against a fascist regime when there was a war of aggression? Is that what you're saying?
This is a question? I mean, yes, this was the question. You're claiming that...
so, Mr. Sipper, you are not supposed to take the floor a second time without receiving it.
So, your question
yes,
was
a question.
that basically we need to defend after an aggression, yeah? This is the question. As I said, I condemn in all the means the aggression of Russia against Ukraine. I think that the way to reach the peace is not the one that Europe is following, because actually we are allowing member states to increase defense expenditure asymmetrically. We are even giving, in derogation of the Stability Pact, allowing to big member states to increase defense. And this is even dangerous for member states which have a bigger fiscal space against others. It's basically a contraposition of each member state against others.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sieper. You asked the floor again. You have 30 seconds.
Colleague, I cannot debate in principle what you said about the necessity, and you said it again now, for peaceful resolution, but I think it's quite, politically speaking, quite naive to think that you can actually deal with a regime like Putin's Russia in a peaceful way, and that there is always a way for dialogue. Dialogue is only possible if the other person wants to speak. Putin doesn't want to speak. Russia doesn't want to speak. They want to conquer and subjugate Ukraine and then the rest of Europe. And that's why we have to rearm, because we have to defend ourselves against that aggression.
Mr. Trudico, you have 30 seconds as well.
Are you happier now that Mr. Trump is actually speaking instead of us with Mr. Putin? Are you happy with that? So I'm actually not happier that Trump is speaking alone now with Putin. That's why I wanted a different strategy from Europe from the very beginning. Following the only way of war is not reaching the peace, my dear.
Thank you. I will now give the opportunity to Mr. Tinkinen to ask his question 210.
Hyvä kollegani, kiitoksia.
Thank you, President. Dear colleague, Trump is talking with Russia only because Europe is so weak. Europe is so weak because it has not invested in defense. If we had invested in defense, then Europe would be sitting at the same table talking with Trump. You said that we should not carry on an arms race in Europe. This is exactly what Putin wants us to say. Russia uses 40% of their budget on war industry. Should Europe then not invest in defense at all? Is that what you're saying?
Thank you very much, colleague, for your question. Actually, I think that the European Union as such, as a union, should invest in European defense. We are not actually investing in European defense. We are allowing member states to invest each other in their own defense, allowing, for instance, big states like Germany, which has huge fiscal room, to invest even more, $1,000 trillion. Actually, it is increasing security within Europe. I say that Europe needs to look for its own strategic autonomy, economically, technologically, and even from a defense point of view. But now, what we are doing are even investing more in arms or buying more arms from Americans rather than building a European mechanism of defense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I will now give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Zoido Alvarez. You have a minute and a half, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We are taking this challenge seriously when it comes to defence, and we can see this through this unprecedented defence commitment, 300 billion euros. But it's not enough just to invest. We need to do this in a much more efficient and coordinated way. We need to avoid duplication. The armed forces of the member states have invested in 10 different types of fighter planes, 14 different types of tanks, different types of frigates. If we compare this with the US, they have focused on one fighter plane, one type of tank, and one frigate. I think if we want to have the most efficient investment, we need less fragmentation and real cooperation. I'm thinking of the FCAS, which is a project supported by France, Germany, and Spain. We want to transform the aerial combat possibilities of the EU. But instead of being a priority project, it is now at risk because of a dispute between Paris and Berlin. This would be a real collective failure and lost opportunity for us if we can't make this work. It is very important. It goes beyond budgets. European defence needs real political will and cooperation. Without this shared ambition, no amount of investment will be enough to guarantee security in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. I call now Mr. Cepeda for 1 minute, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, President. Well, the first thing is I'd like to congratulate the rapporteurs on this report. And in fact, they factored in the opinion from the SEDE committee. And I'd like to just underscore that in this report, that they are focusing on strategic issues, for example, cybersecurity or hybrid threats. This is a question of sovereignty, of survival, and strategic responsibility for the EU. Now, it was important to bring together the strength of our industrial base and increase our strategic autonomy with our population and our countries. Europe is at war. We cannot avoid that, and we have to work together. We cannot work 27 separately. These hybrid threats do not know borders. When an airport is blocked, when airspace is infringed, or when an electoral process is manipulated, all together, united, we will be stronger. And our strength is there in that. And that is precisely where our future lies as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll call to take the floor Vice President Picerno. You have 1 minute, please.
Sì, grazie.
Thank you very much, President.
Kiitoksia. I colleghi che lo hanno detto qua, noi oggi stiamo discutendo non di un dettaglio tecnico, ma stiamo discutendo di una scelta politica chiara sul ruolo che l'Europa deve avere nel mondo, perché in un tempo che è un tempo fragile, un tempo che certamente non è il tempo che noi abbiamo cercato, non è il tempo che avremmo desiderato, perché è un tempo fatto di conflitti, di guerre, è un tempo in cui il confine tra guerra e pace diventa sempre più incerto, è un tempo di fragilità, e in questo tempo che però noi siamo chiamati a vivere, l'Unione Europea non può permettersi di restare fragile, non può permettersi di essere indifesa, per la ragione semplice ma molto chiara che un'Europa indifesa non può difendere la pace. Un'Europa indifesa non può difendere il diritto, non può impedire che la legge del più forte si imponga sulla forza della legge, non può impedire che la forza si imponga sulla ragione, che l'arbitrio si imponga sulla norma. Ecco perché noi dobbiamo sostenere questo accordo e la capacità dell'Europa di reagire. Grazie.
Thank you. We are going now to go to the catch the eye procedure, and I will give the floor to Michel Czerba.
Szanowna Pani Przewodnicząca, Panie Komisarzu, sprawa jest arcypoważna.
Commissioner, this is very serious. There will be negotiations in Berlin. We have the Secretary General of NATO. I think we need to take a long-term perspective. We need to negotiate, and that's why this report is so important. We run the risk of a full-scale war, so we need to be able to transfer these funds. Poland is a good example. We have a special fund in place for the modernization of the Polish army, but we also have projects for dual-use goods as well. What's important is that we make up loopholes by working together and using the MFF.
Yeah. 316.
Madam President, Comisario Hansen, una vez más.
Commissioner Hansen, yet again, the EU has set a proper objective, but with obscure language. Why should we call this omnibus? We're talking about incentivizing defense related to investments to the member states with all of the instruments that are available to them. The EDF, the Horizon for R&D, that is for civilian research. We must act in a united way. We cannot act in a fragmented way. And we must accept that this shouldn't run counter to the CAP or cohesion funds or ERDF. 800 billion euros in investment, that is a huge demand with common debt and with own resources that are up to the task of financing this maturing for the EU, what the EU really needs to be a relevant player. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Mr. Andres Laszlo, 5-2. Yeah.
Az európai védelmi ipar közös
Common support to the European defense industry is not a bad idea as such, but the Brussels elite has managed to screw this up. The original idea was that the defense industry would have easier access to European funding, originally not destined for such purposes in the budget. Behind closed-door deals, the Industrial Committee finally voted on giving access to this funding to the Ukrainian defense industry and not only to the European defense industry. Esther Lakos from TISA voted in favor of financing the Ukrainian defense industry. And we also heard statements that by 2030, the EU should accept as a member state Ukraine with accelerated procedure, and we should also get ready for war in 2030, war with Russia. Is this a coincidence? No. The US is negotiating a peace deal while you are turning a common European program into a special Ukraine program. We don't want this. Europeans want peace and not war.
Mr. João Oliveira, 125.
Thank you, President. 800 billion euros in expenditure for rearmament shows how crazy this bellicose shift is in the European Union that we are now embarking on. We are agitating ghosts and the propaganda to support war, to an arms race, to the resources that we need to build houses and to assist businesses, to increase salaries, and all of the social problems that peoples face in every single country of the EU. A legislative package to establish more privileges, more profits for the weapons industry is an objective that is underpinning this omnibus. More profits for these big multinational companies that are using war as the driver of their profits. This arms race for the EU does not serve the people, and it puts at risk the very union.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Mr. Sieper.
Dear people of Europe, history teaches us a hard but necessary lesson. Appeasement does not fail because it's evil. It fails because it's naive. In the 1930s, Europe believed peace could be preserved through accommodation. In 1936, Hitler remilitarized the Rhineland, and Europe hoped that restraint would calm him. In 1938, Austria was annexed, and Europe hoped it would be enough. At Munich, Czechoslovakia was sacrificed in the name of peace. Within months, Prague fell. In 1939, Poland followed. Appeasement did not prevent war. It taught an aggressor that there would be no consequences. And this matters today. Across the political extremes, we hear calls for peace that ignore the reality of Russian aggression. And that's why, even if we do not want to, we cannot listen to these people, and we must rearm. The tragedy of appeasement, it's not the intention, but the illusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Commissioner Hansen, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, and thank you very much for this very important debate. At a moment of great geopolitical danger, we are finally taking action, and together we are equipping the Union with the instruments needed to protect our citizens. The mini-omnibus is a small by name, but a big step forward for our defense readiness. And let's move forward together on our other defense proposals as well. And let's do so swiftly, because we cannot afford any further delay. And our goal is to deter Russian aggression, prevent war, and preserve peace. And our policy is more production, is less dependency, which would represent a huge weakness, but our purpose remains peace in the end. And in the European Union, it is first and foremost, the European Union is first and foremost and is built as a union of peace, and I think we have to remind ourselves as well. And when it comes to defense of this peace and as well on our defense industry, in the EU there are those countries who are small and those who don't know it yet. And I think that is why it is very important that we move ahead quickly, that we move ahead swiftly. And Mr. Cepeda mentioned it, but as well Mr. Zoido, we have that the reply needs to be European, so the nationalistic way is not the right way to go. We need to work closer together, make the Union of Defence work, and I think that is the ultimate goal, to deter other forces like Russian-style aggressors from not doing what they are doing currently in Ukraine.
Thank you, Commissioner Hansen. I will now give the floor to the rapporteur, Mr. Coles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for the debate. So overall, it has shown a broad recognition that this regulation is a significant milestone. And let me conclude by underlining what this file represents and how we arrived there. From our outset, Parliament approached this work with a clear understanding. Europe cannot afford slow, fragmented responses to its security challenges. Our objective was to make sure the Union's existing tools deliver more and do faster for defence readiness, and this is exactly what the regulation does. I just wanted to convey a message to the horseshoe political spectrum here in this House, to the far left and to the far right. You have been misled or haven't read the regulation. The European Parliament and Commission, we do not create the new funds. It's actually what we do right now. It's existing multi-financial framework, not creating new monies. Another one, we are not funding multinationals. We are actually empowering the small and medium enterprises and startups in particular. That is at focus. US is not being procured. It's actually limited to the EU, EEA countries. So therefore, do not be misled with those who want you to be misled. On the Parliament's most significant achievements in these negotiations was really securing Ukraine's association to the European Defence Fund. This was the Parliament's position from the start. It was not the Commission's proposal nor the Council's mandate. Parliament held its positions consistently until the very end, and this House secured the agreement. This is a major strategic gain for Europe and for Ukraine. More broadly, Parliament ensured that this outcome is particular rather than symbolic. We defended the key safeguards, including the civilian character of the Horizon Europe, while allowing target support for where it's generally needed. And we secured flexibility for member states, including the option to reallocate the cohesion resources towards defense-relevant projects. But of course, substance alone does not explain the result. The quality of cooperation in this Parliament does. And I really want to thank all the shadows for their professionalism and clarity throughout this process. We did not always start from the same position, but we stayed focused on the essentials, and that made our position stronger. And I also would like to thank the Presidency and the Commission for their engagement during the trilogues. And in the end, to conclude, this regulation is not the end of our work on Europe's defence readiness, but it sets a clear standard for how we should proceed. Focus on impact, avoid unnecessary complexity, and act with the seriousness the current security environment demands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The debate is closed. The vote will be held tomorrow. Next item on the agenda is the report of Mr. Rodriguez, amending certain CAP regulation as regards the conditionality system, types of intervention in the form of direct payment, type of intervention in certain sectors and rural development, and annual performance reports, data and interoperability, governance, suspensions of payment, annual performance clearance and control, and penalties. I will start by